This podcast is for informational purposes only and does not dispense medical advice. Always seek the advice of a physician or other qualified health providers if you have any questions regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking such advice because of something you have heard on this podcast. Welcome to a show that we like to call Prostate Cancer Real Talk. Did you know that in the U.S., 1 out of every 8 men will be diagnosed with prostate cancer during his lifetime? 1 out of 8. And black men are 50% more likely to develop prostate cancer in their lifetime and twice as likely to die from the disease. But hey, we're not here to quote statistics and tell you how tough prostate cancer can be. Rather, we are here to create a supportive community of survivors. A place where we can discuss the real-life coping methods from the perspective of a married couple who are living through it day by day. Our hosts, Elle and Shay. This is Prostate Cancer Real Talk. In this episode, we welcome Dr. Joanna Duran. Ms. Duran is a cancer rights attorney, author, speaker, and co-founder CEO of Triage Center, a national nonprofit organization providing free education on practical and legal issues that may impact individuals coping with cancer and their caregivers. Attorney Duran earned a Bachelor of Arts in Political Science with an emphasis in international relations from UCLA and a Juris Doctor from Loyola Law School, Los Angeles. She has spent 30 years working on behalf of individuals with cancer. The Triage Cancer Vision states in part, we dream of a world where everyone has access to information and resources needed to find their best path forward, and that those diagnosed with cancer should spend their time and energy secure in the knowledge that they have objective, accurate information and the necessary resources to make the right decisions. Let's learn more about cancer rights. Ellen Shay, take it away.
Thank you, Dennis, for that wonderful introduction. And we're really pleased to welcome to our show today, Dr. Joanna Duran. She and I met via phone, email over a year ago. We're just reminiscing a little bit about that. We kind of promised each other that we would stay in touch. And when the time was right, we would come together to see if we could collaborate on our mission of addressing people with cancer, and in our particular case, we're talking about prostate cancer. We also welcome to the podcast my lovely wife and co-host, Shay. Shay, how are you today?
I'm good, Elle. How are you?
Good. So, Joanna, before we get into all the details of what you guys do, give us a little background. We heard from Dennis of your bio, but we want to hear from your perspective a little bit more about your personal story and how you came to co-found Triage Cancer.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you and to get to talk a little bit about some of these practical issues that patients and caregivers experience. I have sort of a long story about how I got to the work that I do, but ultimately, many years ago, I started working in a cancer center, and this cancer center actually focused on patients with breast cancer and melanoma. And one of my many responsibilities was actually to host the resource library and to make sure there were materials in exam rooms. But I also worked in a center that was actually the first of its kind, where it was an in-cancer boutique to help patients deal with the comfort and cosmetic side effects of cancer treatment. So things like skincare and wigs, prostheses, mastectomy bras, and I would fit patients for mastectomy bras and prostheses, and then I would bill insurance for it. And frequently they came back denied. Now, this was a long time ago, but I did happen to be in law school at the time, and I knew that there was a federal law that required private insurance to cover those products, but the insurance companies would still deny them. And so I would call up the claims line and I would say, this should be covered. And they would say, no, it's cosmetic. It's not covered. And I would say, yes, it is. And ultimately, I would then say, well, what about WICRA, which is just the acronym for the Women's Health and Cancer Rights Act. And they would say approved. So all I had to do was just know the name of the law, not even like make the argument for why it should be covered, but just knowing the name of the law changed whether or not a patient had to pay even sometimes thousands of dollars out of pocket for those products. And so that just demonstrated to me that if you don't know what your rights are, our systems are set up to walk all over us. And so that really led me to this work. And every single day I see how important it is for patients and caregivers to understand what their rights are and to be able to navigate these systems effectively. And that's ultimately what led me and my sister, who is also a cancer rights attorney, to found Triage Cancer, to provide that free education and make sure that people understand what their rights are.
Just a reminder, to ensure that you stay up to date on the latest episodes from Prostate Cancer Real Talk, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button.
Wow, what a great story. So you and your sister, did you guys go to law school around the same time, or did you go to the same law school?
We didn't actually. We took totally different paths. And I don't think either of us intended to do this work when we went to law school. She actually went to law school in Washington, D.C. at GW and ended up working in Congress after graduating from law school and really getting a bird's eye daily view of how laws are formed and how that process has an impact on people's daily lives. And through a random turn of events, we ended up doing this work together.
So first of all, as we explore this topic, the thought of cancer rights, it really never occurred to me, okay? And probably the reason why it never occurred to me is because I never had a need, even though, I am a prostate cancer survivor. My experience did not call for a dispute or anything like that with the insurance company, the insurance provider. So the thought of cancer rights, frankly, never even crossed my mind. I never even knew there was such a thing. Okay. So, with your experience that you just gave us an overview on, tell us a little bit more about Triage Cancer Center, how long you guys have been around, some of the key cases that you see, some of the key topics that you see. Just give us a little bit more of an in-depth look at what you and your sister do day to day.
So you are not alone in not being aware of cancer rights. When I tell people I'm a cancer rights attorney, I always get kind of a funny look. And people inevitably ask me, well, what's legal about cancer? And my answer is almost everything. But we just don't think of those things as legal issues. So whether or not the Food and Drug Administration approves a treatment is a legal issue. Whether or not your insurance covers that treatment is a legal issue. Can you take time off work and not lose your job to get access to that treatment? That's a legal issue. So the work that we do at Triage Cancer, which we've been doing for about 12 and a half years now, is really focused on the issues, all the legal issues that could come up. But the most common issues that come up are understanding insurance, whether you're trying to get insurance or keep insurance, maybe you're changing jobs and trying to understand your options. It's about if an insurance company does deny coverage, what do you do? Understanding those rights at work, whether you're trying to stay at work or go back to work or even take time off work. If you are taking time off work, how are you replacing those lost wages? So how do you still keep paying your bills? How do you deal with the medical bills and the other out-of-pocket costs that come along with cancer treatment? Do you have estate planning documents in place and medical decision-making documents? So things like advanced directives or...
What's an advanced directive?
Great question. So an advanced directive is making sure that you are thinking through, if you weren't in a position to make medical decisions for yourself, who would you want to do that? Or would you write out instructions to a healthcare team so that they would know what your preferences are? Those are incredibly personal decisions. Everybody feels differently about how they would want to have access to healthcare, or in some cases not have certain types of healthcare. And so if you don't put that in writing, sometimes people who you don't expect might be in a position to be making those decisions for you. So it's really about making sure that you think through what your preferences are and write it down so that will be taken as the path forward, as opposed to somebody else making those decisions for you.
Mm-hmm. So this really could literally be a life and death decision. If a person finds themselves, say, on a ventilator or some other life-sustaining device, somebody needs to be accountable for the decisions that are being made under those circumstances. And it's best if you have a part in making that decision as to who's going to make that decision.
That's very true. I think that when we talk about estate planning and these types of medical decisions, no one likes to think about it and no one likes to talk about it. But the truth is that most people have really strong opinions about what they want to have happen to them and how they want to take care of their families. And so if you don't write that down, then unfortunately the law can apply differently than how you actually want things to happen. So, sometimes people really want certain family members to get certain things. Sometimes we might be in a situation where, let me put it this way. So I was working with a woman once who told me, I have 4 sons. They're wonderful. I don't need a will because they all get along and it'll all be fine. Then I started to ask her some questions about, the things that she had that she cares about and that she felt really strongly about. And she told me about this piano that had been in her family for generations, and she really wanted it to stay in the family. And I said, who's going to get the piano? And she said, oh, I hadn't thought about that, because obviously the 4 sons can't share the piano. So the thing, like even something as simple as that we just don't think about in our daily lives, can actually make a difference, especially, if she were to pass away. That's a moment of grief, and her sons aren't going to be wanting to try to figure out who gets the piano. So even those very simple practical things can make a difference at the end of the day in people's lives.
So I'm really glad that you shared that story with us, because one of the questions that I had for you is, as we're discussing this topic, I thought it would really make things more understandable and real to our listeners if you could share a couple of case studies, experiences that you and the folks at Triage Cancer have had. So can you share with us a couple additional stories or case studies as examples of how you've helped people in this area?
Absolutely. So one of the things that we do at Triage Cancer is we host a legal and financial navigation program. And that's where someone can call us and actually set up time to talk with our team. And they might call with issues about work or insurance or their finances or estate planning, and how do they complete those estate planning documents in their state. So I think, overwhelmingly, I've been doing this work for a long time, and the issues haven't changed. So the primary topics are typically around health insurance, employment and disability insurance, and finances. And that's not really surprising, because when someone's diagnosed, they're thinking, well, how am I going to get access to care? How am I going to deal with work? And how am I going to keep paying my bills? So it doesn't matter where someone lives, the type of cancer that they have, the resources that they have available to them. Those are 3 sort of basic questions that everybody has to figure out. What you have available to you to answer those questions is actually very different based on where you live and the resources that you have. And so for us, it's really about helping people find the resources and understand what's available to them under the law and the programs and resources that are out there. So I often get questions about, I have been diagnosed. I don't know what to tell my employer. I don't know if I'm going to be able to work through treatment. I don't know what my rights are. I'm worried about getting fired. And if I get fired, I lose my health insurance. And then I don't know how I'm going to pay for my care. So, that's a pretty common situation. And for us, again, the answers are going to depend where somebody works and the state that they live in, but we explain all of that. So we talk to them about how their state laws protect them at work, and that there's federal laws that protect them and give them rights to accommodations, and in some cases, the right to take time off work and job protection and health insurance protection. But we also talk through about like what might happen down the road. So if they decide they don't want to work there anymore, for example, we talk to them about how they can get health insurance if they leave their job, so that that isn't the barrier to them moving forward, that they know that there's a safety net of options so that they can make the best decisions for themselves.
So this sounds like a wonderful service, and it looks like you guys are in the actual business of helping people who need it most. So how do people pay for this? Is there a charge? Is there a fee? How's that handled?
Everything that we do at Triage Cancer is free. So in addition to the navigation program, we have a ton of materials and resources and videos and webinars to help people understand what their rights are, because everybody learns in different ways. Not everyone's going to want to pick up a guide. Sometimes they want, just a 5-minute animated video to explain something to them. But then we also host educational events in the community that are all free. So we do those in person in every single state, and then we do them online. And we also spend time training healthcare teams because we want them to be better at helping patients navigate these issues and get connected to resources that can help.
So I have a question, and I'm so glad that you kind of touched on state by state. I actually have an aunt and a first cousin. So it's mother, daughter. They actually have breast cancer now. And so they're actually being treated. And my cousin, maybe every 2-3 months, she's had to have a surgery. Then she's off, she's at home. And then 4 weeks later, 5 weeks later, she has to have another surgery. So can an employer fire her? But then I heard you say it's state by state. Can she be fired? How much time is she allowed to take off? Or what are her options?
Unfortunately, so there's a joke when it comes to lawyers that our answers are often, it depends. And, it's a really frustrating answer to hear, but unfortunately, it does really depend. So it depends on the size of her employer, because laws apply differently based on the size of her employer. There are federal laws that provide protections, like the Americans with Disabilities Act actually would protect employees who have disabilities from discrimination at work. So they can't be treated differently because of their medical condition at work, like being fired because of their medical condition. But then there's laws like the Family and Medical Leave Act, which is a federal law that allows employees to take time off work based on their medical condition. It also allows employees to take time off as a caregiver of a spouse, a parent, or a child. So she might have access both to job protection by taking that time off through the FMLA, but also her employer can't treat her differently because of her medical condition. But the FMLA is time limited, so you only get 12 weeks of leave per year. So if she's taken more than that, then she might not have access to that specific protection beyond the 12 weeks.
Oh, so what happens if you need 12 weeks all at once, consecutive weeks? So then that's it. You know what I mean? Like, so if you get, there's a reoccurrence and you have to have another surgery, there's no more time for you with the FMLA.
That's a great question. So that's true. So once you can, it's very flexible in the 12 weeks and how you use it. So you could take one day off a week to go to chemotherapy, for example, or you could take, 4 weeks off for surgery and recovery and then go back to work. And then maybe, one morning a week or one day a week for radiation therapy. So you can use it in smaller segments of time, but it's a total of 12 weeks during the year. And that includes any time that you're taking for yourself and as a caregiver. So sometimes we have people who had taken time off earlier in the year because they were a caregiver for a family member, but then later in the year, they actually need time for themselves. So unfortunately, it is only 12 weeks per year. But there are times where someone might also be able to take time off as an accommodation under the ADA and get access to some of that job protection. And that's really where the details matter about the type of job someone has, their job responsibilities, and whether or not it's reasonable under the law to take that additional time off. And so it's very fact specific to that person.
Okay. So it is true then that perhaps a cancer patient could possibly lose their job or be fired due to their illness?
Unfortunately, if someone can't perform their job responsibility, they could be let go because they're not able to actually perform their job responsibilities. But, we hear a lot of times from employees with cancer that they're working for an employer and they work at will. So that's sort of a legal term that, an employer can let you go at any time for any reason, except a discriminatory one. And so if an employer is letting an employee go because they have cancer, that's discriminatory, and that's not allowed under the law. And so that's where the ADA provides that protection against discrimination.
That seems kind of hard to prove, though. I mean, the employer's not going to say, well, the reason why I'm firing is because you have cancer. They'll come up with something.
It is very true that it is hard to prove, but it's not impossible. And I will say, over the years of doing this work, I have actually come across patients where their employer told them on an answering machine that they were being let go because they have cancer. So that's a pretty good case. And that particular employee happened to win that case. But anytime you're talking about trying to prove discrimination, you're trying to prove what's going on in somebody else's head. And that's a difficult thing to do. So when, as lawyers are going to try to demonstrate that it didn't make sense, that the reason why was really discriminatory. And so if someone worked for a company for 10 years and always had awesome performance evaluations, and then they disclose to their employer that they have cancer, and then 2 weeks later they're let go, and the employer says, oh, it's because we're restructuring, that's suspect. So, it doesn't necessarily have to be a direct example or piece of evidence that says that. It could be other things that suggest the reason why it was discriminatory.
So I want to take a quick little step back here and just clarify. Your company, Triage Cancer, you don't legally represent people. You are a training and advisory resource, correct?
Exactly. So even though I have a staff of attorneys who are licensed to practice law, we don't actually do that at Triage Cancer. We're not providing representation. We're not filing cases for people. Our real goal is to teach people, because we want people to be able to navigate these systems and understand their rights, really to avoid needing a lawyer. Like, we want to try to avoid some of the problems that lead to someone needing a lawyer to file a lawsuit. Lawyers are expensive, lawsuits take a long time, they don't always turn out the way that you want them to. And so our goal is to try to prevent some of the problems.
So if I am in Nevada, okay, or Maine, and I am a cancer patient and I feel like I need to contact you for your advice, so I can go to your website, which we will provide and we'll give people a link to and whatever. But in case I do need a lawyer, how do I find somebody that's a lawyer to help me?
If it is necessary for someone to hire a lawyer, so for example, if someone has been fired because of their medical condition and wants to actually file a lawsuit against the employer, or if someone wants to write a trust for their estate planning documents and they want to hire an attorney to help them do that, we actually can make referrals, but we are going to provide referrals based on where somebody lives, their income level sometimes, because there's legal aid organizations that can provide free or low-cost legal assistance based on where somebody lives, or in certain circumstances, an individual attorney to help with that particular legal issue.
So you guys are in all 50 states.
We do have resources and information for all 50 states.
Okay.
On our website, we sort information in two ways. We have resources by topic. So if you wanted to learn about health insurance, you could go to our health insurance topics page and see all the things we have on health insurance. But we also have resources by location. And those are state-specific resources where we've found the direct links and phone numbers for specific programs and services and laws related to that particular state. And then we also have charts of laws. So you can see across the whole country the differences in what's available by state. So for us, that's a way for us to keep track. It's also to help healthcare teams where they're seeing patients across state lines and they understand what's available. But it also shows some advocacy opportunities where we as advocates in the cancer community can actually improve the laws. We have lots of laws that aren't good enough, where people fall through the cracks. And so that's an opportunity to engage in advocacy in the cancer community too.
So your service is extremely unique. I've never heard of anything like this before. Just out of curiosity, are there other companies like yours, or are you kind of like a standalone thing?
We are definitely a standalone thing in the way that we provide this education. And to be honest, that's really why we created Triage Cancer. When we founded the organization, our goal was actually not to create another nonprofit organization in the cancer community, but we felt really strongly that this is where we saw the gap. We'd already been working in the cancer community and there's a need for education. And we wanted to take education into communities that didn't have big national cancer conferences going on. And so before COVID, we had actually delivered in-person educational events in every single state, DC and Guam, because we have to be in communities in order to provide that education. Now, we have not been in every single community across the country, but that's also why we train healthcare professionals who are in every single community, because they are ambassadors to connecting patients to this information.
It sounds like you guys have a lot on your website. Is it possible that you could give the listeners your website address so they could go? Because this is amazing. Like Elle said, I didn't even know anything about a cancer right attorney. So I'm sure our listeners are just, really excited. So we want to go ahead just now and let you give them your website address.
The website is triagecancer.org. So that's triagecancer.org.
Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and like this video to keep seeing more content like this from us. It will also benefit YouTube's algorithm, helping to introduce our content to others who may need it most.
As we draw toward the conclusion of our discussion, Shay mentioned your website, and of course, we looked at it. One of the things that I was most impressed with was the broad scope of things that you guys do, seminars, services, what have you. Can you give us a quick overview of everything that you guys do? People can go to your website and they can see all this, but I want your personal perspective on the range of services that your company provides.
Triage Cancer really provides free education in three ways. We're providing that through free educational events for patients and caregivers and advocates and healthcare professionals who want to learn this information to help others. We have materials and resources, so things like our print practical guides to cancer rights. We have animated videos. We have some podcast episodes that kind of give a 10-minute introduction to some of these topics. And then we also have resources. So we have an online interactive toolkit to help people navigate finances after a cancer diagnosis. We have worksheets to help people figure out the cost of their health insurance plan when they're making decisions about health insurance. But then we also have that legal and financial navigation program, which is where people can find that free one-on-one help to get answers to their questions.
I think what you guys do is just awesome. It's so amazing. And this is all free.
Everything is free.
It's all free.
I'm sure that with the information that we will be providing, how people can access Triage Cancer and the wonderful services that your company provides. I'm absolutely positive that I hope we don't overflow your capabilities there. How many employees do you have?
We actually have 14 employees at Triage Cancer, which for me actually seems like a lot, because for perspective, during COVID, we had 4 employees. So we've grown a lot in the last few years. And partly that's because we've been able to raise funds because we have more need. There are so many people out there who could benefit from this information. And so the number of people contacting us for help has gone up. So that's allowed us to try to hire some more staff to meet that need.
I mean, your answer reminds me of a conversation. I know you don't remember this, but when you and I first talked well over a year ago, probably 2 years, it was not too long after we started our podcast. And I shared with you a little, I don't know, frustration or whatever. We were just getting started. And I was wondering if, there was going to be the appreciation for what we were doing, and if we were going to find sponsorship and get funded and whatnot. And you told me that just hang in there. You're doing the right thing. People will recognize you and you will get a sponsor. You will get funded. So you were really encouraging to me. I don't know if you remember that or not.
I do remember that conversation, and I am happy that and appreciative of the work that you are both doing.
And so, Joanna, what's the best way for listeners to contact you? Is it through the website, or is there a telephone number? What's the best way?
The fastest way for people to contact us who need help through our navigation program is to go to triagecancer.org/get help. And that takes them directly to the page for the navigation program where they can fill out a form. And then it sends them an automatic email where they get to pick a time off of our calendar to meet with us that works for them. And that avoids some of the phone tag. But if someone doesn't have access to the internet, or just frankly doesn't like being on the internet, they can absolutely call us.
Okay, what's that number?
It's 424-258-4628.
And as we conclude our conversation, Joanna, do you have any final thoughts you'd like to leave with our listeners?
I think I would say that I just encourage people to know that there's help out there and that there are resources. But sometimes you actually have to ask for help. You have to seek out the resources. Unfortunately, they're not always obvious or easy to find. And I think that we're a good example of that. But there is help out there.
Joanna, it's been awesome. And again, you guys are doing amazing work. I'm just so happy that something like this, that there's a tool that's out there that's available for people that needs information on cancer rights. So I just applaud you and your team for everything that you guys are doing.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And I appreciate your willingness to spread the word.
Thank you very much. Take care now.
Thanks, Joanna. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. Have a great day.
To find out more information on the guest you just heard or previous guests and a list of Prostate Cancer Real Talk episodes, visit our website, prostatecancerrealtalk.com. And if you have a question, comment, or if you would like to share your story, send Elle and Shay an email, ellandshay@prostatecancerrealtalk.com. That's LEL and Shay, SHAY, at prostatecancerrealtalk.com.